Oh, hi, sorry, didn't see you there. I was just busy reinventing the wheel. Yeah, check out my idea. So, pretty much it's just gonna be 3 little wheels inside of 1 big wheel, and I call it the wheel, but with 3's instead of E's. Hey, Michelin, call me! In this video, I'm gonna go absolutely nuts about a cheap plastic microphone. But first, let's travel back in time a bit to the 6th generation of video game consoles, starring the Sony PlayStation 2, Microsoft Xbox, and Nintendo GameCube. Oh, and the Sega Dreamcast. Though it wasn't a standout feature just yet, this was the first generation where we really started seeing the concept of online multiplayer become a reality in the home console market. In 2002, 1 year after the launch of Microsoft's original Xbox, the company introduced Xbox Live, a service that allowed true online play between friends. Sure, they weren't the first to ever dabble with the concept. In fact, one of the Dreamcast standout features was its own online capabilities. But Sega's iteration of the idea ended up being both too niche and too ahead of its time to really catch on. Microsoft, however, what with their Microsoft money and years of experience with computer technology and all, built their system with online play in mind from the very beginning, as they considered Xbox Live to be an important feature that would give their console an edge over the PlayStation brand's massive success. While the Xbox Live didn't blow up in popularity at the time, it did set the stage for the next generation of consoles, and even introduced popular features such as gamer tags, which are customizable usernames that Xbox owners could claim in order to easily connect with friends. On the other hand, the GameCube featured some wired multiplayer options, one notable example being Mario Kart Double Dash being playable with up to 16 different players on 8 separate consoles by stitching a bunch of GameCubes together with LAN cables. But the functionality of Xbox Live was the clear direction that gaming would soon be moving in, and the other companies seemed to know it. Flash forward to the 7th gaming generation. While Sega was no longer in the hardware business after a series of failures, leaving my beloved Crazy Taxi without a home to call its own, Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo were the true unrivaled kings of the gaming world for the first time. Their 3 platforms, the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and Nintendo Wii, all did quite well, with the Wii of course being the most successful of the bunch thanks to each console being bundled with 4th best-selling game of all time, Sports. But the 7th generation was also notable for being the first time that online wireless play was achieved on all platforms. Wireless internet was becoming much more ubiquitous and mainstream at the time, so Microsoft's decision to invest in the Xbox Live brand gave them an early head start. It was during the 360's life where features introduced with the original Xbox, such as in-game voice chat, really started taking off. The PlayStation 3 had similar capabilities, including voice or text chat as well as their own version of gamer tags. Though I remember most kids on the playground at the time agreeing that Xbox Live was the better place to be in terms of these types of features and functionality, even after they started charging $60 a year for it, god damn it. And the Wii, well, the Wii had tennis. The Wii, however, did not feature its own iteration of gamer tags, instead locking each console to a 12-digit friend code that you had to manually share in order to connect with friends. The Wii did not launch with voice chat, nor did it feature text chat. The closest thing it got was the Wii message board, which allowed players to send letters to friends that took 2 hours to type with the stupid Wii pointer controls. But that sucked, and for all intents and purposes was not true text chat like the other 2 consoles had. God damn it, even the Nintendo DS had PictoChat, which was a fun live chat where you could share hand-drawn illustrations with friends, and that came out in 2004. The Wii was definitely behind the times in the online department, but while these features might have been lacking compared to the competition, playing actual games online was an absolute atrocity as well. These games just did not work well online. Mario Kart Wii wasn't too bad if I remember correctly, but if you wanted to play Smash Brawl with friends, you better have had a bucket of popcorn handy because the game lagged bad enough to stretch out each match to the length of a Marvel movie. These issues didn't go unnoticed at the time, and while the Wii was definitely a massive success when it launched due to the novelty of it all, once sales began to sink, they sank hard, and I personally believe that this is one of the reasons why. The Blue Ocean audience that bought into the Wii for Wii Sports and Mario Kart moved on to newer fads, while core gamers who were looking for more standard experiences were often alienated by the company during this time. In addition, the PS3 and 360 simply had better third-party support, better features such as the PS3 also functioning as a Blu-ray player right out of the box, and of course, the ability to connect with friends and players from around the world easily and without major lag, making those systems quite desirable alternatives once people got tired of the Wii's thing. But what if I told you that 2 years after the release of the Wii, Nintendo finally looked around the room and saw the direction that gaming was moving in? What if I told you that Nintendo finally recognized the popularity and appeal of communicating with friends while playing games, and decided to build new experiences around the idea of online voice chat? What if I told you that the Wii Speak is a complete and utter piece of trash? The Wii Speak! Finally, I can talk about the thing that this video is titled after. The Wii Speak launched during the 2008 holiday season, in conjunction with Animal Crossing City Folk. That's right, 2 full years after the release of the Wii, and after the release of popular online games such as Brawl, Mario Kart, and f***ing Rayman Raving Rabbids 2, Nintendo finally stopped sitting on their hands and found a way to integrate audio chat in the game. They really should have released this thing with Brawl. Before we get any further, I actually encountered a problem while working on this video. I no longer own any Wii Speak compatible games, meaning that I have no appropriate game to air footage of while I talk about this thing. So, because of the fact that I only own 10 total Wii games after selling a bunch of them as a stupid kid, I decided to pull a name out of a hat. The Simpsons game released on October 30th, 2007 for most major platforms. Please consider this Wii Speak video to be my official Simpsons game retrospective as well. That's right, I heard the requests. The Wii Speak is a USB microphone that plugs into the console and sits above or below the TV. You know, the TV, the thing where music and sounds from games screech out of. According to developers at Nintendo, the Wii Speak was designed to filter out any background noise from the game you were playing, and it would only pick up the voices of people in the room talking. Let me just say, as somebody who owned a Wii Speak and a copy of Animal Crossing City Folk in 2008, they were lying. The Wii Speak was a massive waste of time. I mean, it did actually capture audio surprisingly well, and it wasn't too hard to make out what my friends were saying. The problem was that it actually worked too well, meaning that it not only captured what I was saying, but what my game was saying as well, and it even managed to pick up some of the audio from my friend's house, meaning that using a Wii Speak was more akin to sitting in an echo chamber where you could kind of hear your friends screaming that we should visit the Able sisters next. Although I owned one of these puppies as a kid, I eventually sold it to GameStop for a fraction of what I paid for it. And I'm guessing that however many pennies they gave me was still more than it was actually worth. I bought this one on eBay a few weeks ago for a crisp $5 bill just for this video. I did not realize that it was missing this front piece of plastic when I bid on it. I'm never going to touch this thing again after today, and I'm still quite upset about this. I'm going to give this thing a little bit of credit here. The Wii Speak was pretty cool when I used it with Animal Crossing as a kid. I already went over why it sucked technically, you know, echo chambered audio and all of that. But I do remember really enjoying the feeling of hopping to my friends' islands and laughing it up together. It was very novel for me. See, I didn't have access to all sorts of games or systems as a kid for financial reasons, but what I did have was almost always Nintendo, so City Folk was the first time I was ever able to communicate with friends while playing a game in this way. And that's honestly an experience that I still have fond memories of to this day. And that concludes my praise for the Wii Speak, because Jesus Christ, this thing is horrid. Okay, first of all, it didn't come bundled with City Folk despite being such a heavily promoted feature of that game. To charge extra for a peripheral that provided purely optional functionality was fair and made sense, but the problem is that this thing was not cheap. While researching this video, I found conflicting information. Some places say it launched for $20 and some say it launched for $30, but either way, for a crappy microphone that only worked with a single game at the time, that's a pretty steep asking price. This wouldn't be as big of an issue to me if the Wii allowed other USB microphones to work with this game as well. Even if the experience sucked, I would have appreciated having the option. Shigeru Miyamoto did state in an interview that the reason why the Wii Speak was sold separately and the price was so high was because the hardware that filtered out TV audio was quite advanced and therefore expensive to produce. To that I say, Miyamoto, you're either deaf or full of it, because I refuse to believe that your stress test didn't show you that this thing was about as good of a microphone as a sealed can of tuna. To be fair, a Wii Speak / City Folk bundle did eventually release, several years later, but hey, they figured out how to do it without bankrupting the company. That's great. In addition to City Folk, the Wii Speak did eventually get its own application, the Wii Speak Channel, which was a little app where you could chat with friends that also featured some silly stuff like Mii integration. Basically Nintendo's answer to Xbox chat lobbies, except, you know, with the Wii Speak instead of an actual good microphone that you could pick out yourself. I actually never uninstalled this from my Wii as a kid, so we're able to take a quick look at it here. See, Nintendo disabled the ability to download Wii software in 2019, meaning that the Wii Speak channel is no longer accessible unless you already have it on your system. Loading this up actually makes me feel pretty neato. Who else can say they spent a day in 2020 staring at this? And after taking a glance at the Wii Speak channel, I can confidently state that this user interface sucks, and I have no idea what any of these buttons are for. Look at all of this, it's just a bunch of nothing. Where's the priority? I did at least figure out how to test my microphone, and apparently it's working, but it doesn't let me hear my own voice to check for myself, so I guess I'll take the Wii's word for it. The Wii Speak did also feature functionality with games other than City Folk. 12 other games to be exact. Look at this list, I can engrave this on a grain of rice. I bet a crisp $5 bill that I can name this entire list in a single breath. Animal Crossing, City Folk, Endless Ocean 2, Adventures of the Deep, NHL 2K10, NHL 2K11, The Conduit, Uno, NBA 2K10, NBA 2K11, Monster Hunter Tree, Tetris Party Deluxe, Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, Mix, Superstar. Come on, stay up. Ooh, I can buy another Wii Speak with this. From what I can understand, Wii Speak integration worked in most of these games how it did in City Folk. You simply chatted while playing with friends. The Conduit, which was an online shooter with up to 12 players per match, only allowed you to hear the audio of the 6 players closest to you because the developers didn't want too much Wii Speak noise interference getting in the way of the experience. Yeah, I see why the list of compatible games is so short now. There are a few interesting games on this list though. Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, and Tetris Party Deluxe. For the first 2 games, there was actually Wii Speak functionality built into the single-player gameplay, which allowed you to record your own voice, which would be used in different ways for each game. That's pretty neat, but Scott the Woz already made the joke I would have made about that, so let's move on. For Tetris Party Deluxe, however, I actually couldn't figure out how the microphone worked in that one. I believe that it might have just been used in voice chat lobbies, but that game also featured modes where you could play Tetris with the Wii balance board and the goddamn Wii wheel. So for all I know, there was a mode where you could scream at your Tetraminos in order to move them, I don't know. But other than the fact that the list of Wii Speak compatible games is smaller than a Tic Tac, there's another reason why it irks me so much. Only 2 of these games, City Folk and Endless Ocean 2, are Nintendo published, meaning that Nintendo produced this expensive, non-functioning, half-assed peripheral, dumped it with Animal Crossing, and called it a day. And that actually leads me to my main issue with the Wii Speak, and that is the fact that it perfectly represents Nintendo's insistence on being Nintendo. I know that sounds silly, but let me explain. Look at Nintendo's output, especially beginning with the Wii and DS era. They always succeed at innovating more than anything else. The Wii is especially remarkable when you think about it. It's basically just a slightly upscaled GameCube in terms of power, but give families the ability to bowl by wiggling and boom, 101 million units sold. The Wii U was a massive failure, yeah, but it's a failure that directly led to the Switch. Nintendo polished up their ideas and produced what might end up being their best-selling home console when everything's said and done, precisely because it's so unlike anything else. Nintendo is so good at just saying f it and doing whatever they want, and this is one of the reasons why they've been so successful for as long as they've been. But this innovation, this desire to constantly try new things and reinvent wheels, ends up hurting them because there are wheels that work perfectly fine and don't need reinventing.
No, there f***ing aren't!
The Wii was a smash, there's no denying that, but while Nintendo was more than happy to move at the beat of their own drum and focus on prioritizing casual audiences during this generation, they were also clearly trying to appeal to their longtime fans as well. Games like Brawl, Mario Galaxy, and Metroid Prime 3 all make it clear that during the 7th generation of game consoles, Nintendo wanted to reach as many different audiences as possible, while making games that players of any skill level could enjoy. And the fact that several popular games like Brawl implemented online play at all shows me that Nintendo was following the direction that games were moving in, and they were willing to embrace ideas that were being popularized by other companies. But they've always been so bad at it, and they absolutely refuse to do things any better. Let's look to the present day and the state of online on the Nintendo Switch. It works pretty well for some games such as Mario Kart, while other games such as Smash Ultimate are very hit or miss. And some games such as Mario Maker 2 have such laggy, inconsistent online that Anthony has completely given up on even playing those games that way anymore. But besides that, look at the features we have with Nintendo Switch Online. We're still stuck with numerical friend codes, though to be fair, we can find friends by linking our Switch to Facebook or Twitter. We still don't have lobbies where we can chat with friends. We don't even have the goddamn message board that the Wii had. We still don't have built-in voice chat integration. For that, we need to download the Nintendo Switch Online phone app and play one of the, 2 games that allow you to use your phone to voice chat while playing your Switch. I might as well just call them at that point. I honestly don't understand who this was designed for. Seriously, who was this designed for? The 4 people who don't know that their phones can function as phones? Interestingly, a couple of third-party games such as Fortnite do allow built-in online voice chat, meaning that the functionality does exist. But while Xbox and PlayStation have normalized online communications and easily matching with friends and strangers, Nintendo has always been 2 steps behind in this department. Some people defend them by pointing out the fact that Nintendo Switch Online is only $20 per year, while the other services have monthly or yearly fees that usually add up to at least triple that price. Yeah, but counter-argument, I just want to communicate with my friends through the Switch. I don't think it's too much to ask, and I don't think the fact that Switch Online is so cheap makes that desire any less realistic. I can't message my friends, I can't voice chat with them, I can't even go to their profile and click a button to invite them to a game of Smash. Everything is and always has been so unnecessarily complicated. And it doesn't need to be. The competition has been doing it right for years, and the Wii Speak perfectly illustrates Nintendo's problem here. Nobody was asking Nintendo to reinvent a microphone or a gaming headset. The company didn't build the Wii or its controllers with the ability to connect a microphone, despite the direction gaming was clearly moving in at the time. So instead, they decided to fix a problem that they created for themselves by making the Wii Speak, a barely functioning hunk of junk that ended up being used for exactly a baker's dozen games, no more, no less. For as many things as Nintendo gets right, for Nintendo's constant creativity and innovation keeping them relevant even when their hardware isn't as powerful as the competition's, for as many wonderful and iconic games the company is capable of making, Their inability to understand and implement simple features that would make their games more enjoyable and more of a shared experience has always been one of their biggest weak points. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like they have any intention of ever changing that. Look, I understand that some Nintendo fans don't like hearing this sort of thing. I get that complaining about stuff like this sometimes comes off as being too negative or hating or whatever. I really love Nintendo and I understand their desire to do things their own way. But I think it's important to remember that criticizing something that you love doesn't mean that you have to love it any less. I also think that it's okay to recognize when a company does something that feels objectively backwards or just straight up wrong, even when that company has a pretty positive overall output. Does it bother me that Nintendo can sometimes be tone deaf and refuse to implement even basic features that would make their consoles more enjoyable to more people? Absolutely! Do I think that makes them a crap company or I hate them for it? Not at all. I just really wish they were more open to feedback about stuff like this. Also, I really wish the Switch had folders. Jesus Christ! So that was my retrospective of the Simpsons game. Overall, it's pretty okay, but the lack of the voice chat integration kind of made it a 2 out of 10 for me personally. As for the Wii Speak itself, I'm probably just gonna throw it away now that this video's done, not gonna lie. But I had an idea. It is just a USB microphone at the end of the day. Maybe I can plug it into my laptop and use it for my next video.
2 hours later.
It didn't work.